We'll be looking this evening at verses 15 to 17 of 1 John chapter 2. Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. We've called this the confirming focus, trying again to find confirmation of our faith in this little letter of 1 John. John writes, do not love the world or the things of the world. As we look at this and we see this do not phrase again, we're reminded of something we know quite well. This do not word doesn't always work in the way that God intended. There is a danger in the do not. You tell a child, do not, and sometimes you tell an adult, do not, and the words just pop into their minds and they think, oh, that sounds like something that maybe I should try. Remember what God said to it in the beginning? You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree. And Satan comes along and he says, well, you know, God's holding something back from you. The do not can become a temptation to us and can become something that we want instead. There is this danger of do not. We know it is to stop us. We know it is to constrict us. Yet we can't help feeling, what would it be like if we just did? You may have those stickers at work or around. Do not press this button. Do not touch this. And you just think, well, I just want to. Don't touch that wet paint. Well, is it really dry? Is it really wet? These things work like that. John says to us here, do not love the world or the things of the world. This is a big temptation to us, otherwise John wouldn't bother saying it. There's always that temptation to want to love the world and the things that it is giving to us and sending to us. My pictures are not coming up for you, but they're coming up for me. Go out and see what I'm doing. John gives us here three convicting comparisons we want to look at. If we look at the three verses, they each have a comparison in them, and we want to see these comparisons, how they work through. The three convicting comparisons between God and the world. In order, if we are to know the do not and have that application in our lives and not wanting to, we need a little bit of help at times, and John recognizes this. And the first of these comparisons is this: the emotional attachment. The emotional attachment. John says, do not love the world, the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. If we love the world, and we are desiring to have everything the world offers to us, we want its wealth, we want its riches, we want its applause, we want its positions, its status. If we love the world, then the love of the Father is not in us. Now, John describes this love in two ways. He says first that we are not to love the world. Now, he's not speaking about the planet there. He's not saying you shall not fall in love with trees and birds, and you'll not admire the beauties of the things around you. We are totally meant to love like the things around us and admire them. But that out of love for God. They are God's creation. They are the things that He has formed, the things that He has made. But what John is speaking about here is what sin has done in forming the world after its own pattern and after what it wants. When God made the world, God said it is good. And everything was good until that sin entered, when do not was broken. And sin entered the heart and into the life. From that point on, we have been enslaved under a system, under the spirits of this world, under Satan's power. And he has brought other things into our lives that we desire. This is the way the world runs. The world desires to have its emotions set up and helped. It desires to have comfort in living. It desires to give us these things. And the world once says it can give us these things. But whoever loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Whoever believes the lie that it is the paycheck that comes from the boss that provides all the needs of his life, and not the Father in heaven, those two things are not compatible. The love of the world then as a system, the love of the things of the world. We all have things. We all have things. We've got things tonight. We've got clothes. We might have watches. We might have phones. We can have all kinds of things. But the love of the things is to love the things above God. To live our lives to gain things. We want that bigger home that the world says will make us more comfortable and will settle us greatly. We want the position or the place in society. We want that thing. We want the things that abide. You've seen the adverts over these past weeks maybe of the men telling their wives how wonderful their gardens would look if only they had a bigger television. And all the time actually what they wanted the television was to watch the football. They wanted things. But you cannot love the world and have a desire for simply the things of this world and love the Father. Those things don't work. We're looking to the world to please us, then we're in love with it. And we believe that the world is able to satisfy us in and of itself. But the world has never ever been able to do that. As a physical creation, the only reason it can satisfy us is because God, the Father, has chosen to provide through it for our needs. God has connected everything that we receive through this planet to come to us. It is God who provides, not the world. We need to remind ourselves that this power of the world, as we have it in the Scriptures, is described as the power under Satan. It is under his authority, but Satan is not a creator. He's a liar, a deceiver. He's a creature. He has limited power, limited abilities. He's a lot stronger and wilier than we are. We should not mess around with him. But it is the Father, not the world, that believes. Now, these are not new things that we can be drawn to. But it does pay us to just check this evening where our affections lie. Are we in love with the Father? Or are we in love with the world? Do we want the things the world is giving to us? Or do we actually want do we love the Father who gives them? Some people love the people who give them things. They love Auntie so-and-so because she always gets the best toys and brings them to them as children. And some of us love Uncle so-and-so because he hasn't got children of his own, but he always sends us a tidy check at Christmas. They love the things, but they actually love the individual. Here we are told to set our affections in the Father. And if we don't have a love, if we love the world and we're looking to the world to receive, then the love of the Father is not in us. We don't know what John's talking about, and therefore we are not Christians. The true life is not there. We've related before the need to sometimes remind ourselves often at our meals saying grace and saying thank you to God for the things He's provided. It didn't come out of the supermarket. It came from the hand of God originally to give thanks to God for His provisions. But we are to set our affections and our remembrance on the things of the Father. It's an easy thing for us to fall in love with the world. The danger here is how far do you tread? How near can I get? That's the danger of the do not again, isn't it? How near can I get to loving the world without getting burnt? Try that with a fire and see how far you get. The emotional attachment is to be to God alone. It is mutually exclusive. If anyone loves the world and it doesn't give an amount there, the love of the Father is not in him. The two are exclusive. You cannot love God, the world, and love God. Another verse says you cannot love mammon, the things, the riches of the world, and love God. So that emotional attachment is going to catch up with you in a minute. There we are. The second thing we note, not only emotional attachment, embracing attachment. That second verse there. John moves in a little deeper. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eye, and the pride of life is not from the Father, but from the world. All that is in the world is not from the Father. The embracing attraction. It's one thing to have our affections set upon the Father, to have that love. John mentioned love there 3 times in that opening verse of the section we're looking at. But now he speaks of the way in which we are drawn after. James describes desire and puts it in context. Desire leads to sin, which brings forth death. If you ever try to find one of these little questions you can ask children and get them to find it, ask them who death's grandmother is. And death's grandmother is desire. Desire when it's conceived, brings forth death. And when it brings forth sin, and when sin has full grown, it brings forth death. Desire is that basis. John gives us 2 desires. The embrace, the things we take into the heart. There is the desire of the flesh. The things our bodies crave for. There are many things the world tries to promise us along these lines. Here is a lovely drink that we will advertise before you and tell you that it will give you energy in the morning. It will make your day go by so much easier. You will just skip to work if you have this breakfast cereal. You will delightfully go through your day as if on a cloud of ease. You've seen the adverts. They all paint the picture of that, don't they? They don't really believe what they're telling you sometimes. But the picture's there. And your flesh is meant to think, oh, that would taste so good. That would be really nice. And next time you go to the shop, the idea is that you will remember the product you have seen. It meets a need that you have, and therefore you will go and buy it. The world works for advertising, this system of working. It is working to the craving of your flesh. Or maybe you have a car and it's getting a little long in the tooth. It's not as sweet sounding as it used to be. Well, there's a new model. And you know it's a lot smoother running than the old model and a lot sweeter to sit in and everything about it is lovely. And maybe you're having a job to think about which one you will have. Well, you can have a variety of colors and you can have it in any shade you like and you can have what you like. Your flesh can have its desire. Works in those ways as well. It works in our marriages, cravings for satisfactions which we have portrayed before us in our television programs, or we read through our papers. All of these things seek to raise desires within us. The things that are brought to us through advertising, and they're not desires, that's temptation. But a temptation is brought to the heart and begins to turn into sin when it is turned to a desire for something we don't really need. And we want simply because it's going to meet my flesh. It's just going to meet my flesh. It's the only reason for having it. And we need cars. We need food. All of these things we have needs. But there is those things which we have just because we want. And when those wants become the ultimate aim of our lives, we have turned over from loving God to loving the world. Desire for the flesh. The desire of the eyes. Part we have covered this, but the world works on this. You'll go around the corner of the road here tonight. You'll get up the top of the hill. You'll turn the corner, and in front of you will be shop windows. And those shop windows will have in front of you various things they have purposely designed that you should see, that they are hoping that somebody driving past will think, oh, that would look good on me, or that would be really nice to have. Because they know that your eye is capable of being led into an impulse purchase, and you are capable of being led into these things. They don't make books and things up just in the plainest of covers, do they? They put pretty pictures on the front of it. They don't need to do that. They could just put the title. But they know if you see a pretty color, your eye will be drawn to it. Your eye has a capacity to have a desire and to be drawn. Now God says, if you desire the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eye, they're not from the Lord. The third thing he notes here is not simply the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eye, but the pride of life. Pride in possessions. Pride in what we have. The element of the things I have are mine, and I'm proud of it. And you walk in the home and you think as you go in, oh, I'm such a fortunate person to have all I have, and oh, how fortunate I am to possess all these things. But it's not simply to delight in the things I now possess, but delight to show the people who come in the door of my house what wonderful things I have. And to point out the various features of the beautiful things I have, and the pride of possessions. The pride that does not wish to share those possessions, but hold on to them and clings to them and feels the importance those possessions give to them. Pride arising in life. Not recognizing the God who has given them, just pride in what I have. The pride that can so easily arise in us when we do get that fresh car or vehicle, and, well, you know, it's souped up and it's different, and, oh, you should see what it can do. You know, we want to show and display. These things are all real things that can lead through, when they are conceived, to sin. And when they are allowed to go unchecked in life, will lead to death. And John is clear. These attractions are not from God. These desires are not from God. God has food and provides food for us to eat, and it's for our bodily good. But He doesn't tempt anyone. It's not in God's character to tempt, it's in Satan's character to tempt. Remember what He did to Jesus? Look at these stones, Jesus. You know, they would make lovely loaves of bread. You're a bit hungry, and you could transform these stones into bread. He has done it to the Savior, He does it to us. But they're not from God. God doesn't want you hungry, He wants you fed. But He doesn't want you fed so that your flesh can feel good, or that your eyes may be led astray, or that you might have pride in your life. He wants you to be fed in the knowledge that God has provided these things for my body and for myself. And to recognize that these things, affirm that these things are the Father's gifts. We're going to look at the Beatitudes in the coming weeks, and I don't want to cross over my path too quickly, but there's a sense in the recognition, what I have is given from God. Now, some of you older folks, you've grown up in a very privileged time in that sense. You remember what it is to have nothing. You remember what it is to have nothing. And as you look back at your life, you've grown up as a Christian, got older as a Christian. Isn't that a wonderful thing now to look back and say, Lord, what wonderful things you've given me. But we're growing up in an age that says you deserve these things. And you have a right to these things. And you're going to have these things, and does not work in that concept of being grateful. But now this is the accepted norm. You will have. Our children expect to have the latest gadget, the latest toy, the latest thing. They are told it is their right to have it. The children have rights these days. You may have heard of that. And all of these things, and it goes so anti to it. But we need to affirm with our children, with our grandchildren. We need to remind our own hearts, these gifts come from God. We hold it for Him. Maybe one way to keep that pride in check is to ask ourselves, would we let God use these things? That car you're thinking of getting, would you let so-and-so come and sit in it and be brought to church in it? Would you use it on a visit out to one of these ladies' meetings or events and let other people sit in it? Is this a possession that is for your own benefit, or is it something that God can use? That house, that home, is God able to use the chairs and the table and the cooker that's in it to entertain other Christians, to let other people come in? Or is it your own possession? Will you cry over the chink that goes in the china? Or will your eye not mind, but think more, in your heart how great it is to give food to those who fellowship in the Lord with me. Affirming, embracing attraction. We should be attracted to our Father's gifts. We should love what He gives unto us and desire it. There's a scriptural account that goes with this very much in the Old Testament. God's people, you remember they came out of Egypt. They needed food. And God miraculously provided food for them. What would happen every day, the dew would fall and come overnight, and that dew would be removed in the morning, and there would be on the ground something that was like bread, a bit like wafer, that was called manna. Manna from heaven is a phrase we still use today. God's gift to us. It was miraculous food. It was miraculous food that made up the majority of their diet, but not all their diet. The children of Israel at times came to places where there was other food available, but they had animals and other things around them to get food. There came a point when they started to speak to themselves and say, I'm getting fed up with this old manna. I'm sick and tired of this manna. And God really is doing us a disservice by just giving us manna. And so they began to cry out to one another and stir one another up, and then they got on to moaning at Moses, as they always did, and said, you brought us out here just to treat us so badly. You know, while we were in Egypt, we used to sit at the biggest cucumbers. We used to have the most lovely meals. We had everything we'd ever wanted. God says, I will sort this lot out. And He sends them quail. And He sends them mountains of it. And He tells them as soon as they have begun to eat it, and while it is still in their mouths, He will judge them. And you read that while it was still between their teeth, those who complained and moaned died. God provides us miraculous gifts in our lives. He does. I don't think we understand. We think money and we think deserving. But God has worked all these things out so we can have food to eat, or we can have clothes to wear. He can provide for us. Most of you have never been in a situation like I have, where I've been off to college and had to give up everything up and rely on the Lord very much in that way. But He provides. And He does in your life. You don't always see it. But He does. And He provides what you need. But the problem so often comes with wanting something we cannot afford. Craving something that really we don't need. Did the children of Israel need the meat of the quail? Well, they had lambs, they had cattle. They brought them out of Egypt with them. They were getting fed. There was enough food for their animals as well as themselves. They were not starving in the wilderness. They craved something they didn't really need. And they were judged for it. And my friend, we will be judged for that as well. We get rebuked. We get turned back. Affirm, you recognize the Father's gifts. What is attracting your life? Then the everlasting ambition. Do not love the world and the things of the world. Remember this, the world is passing away along with its desires, and whoever does the will of God abides forever. Those things the world says it can provide for us. The world says it's got everything under control. It will look after you. It will care for you. The things of the world will be provided for you. You can have whatever you want. You can have it on zero finance if you like, as long as you like and need. You can have whatever you would like. Whatever your heart craves, your flesh desires, whatever your eyes see, whatever you would like to be proud of, you may have all of it. It hangs in front of you. It keeps you going along. But my friend, the world has never been able to provide on any of its promises and never has any intention of doing so. It tells you that you can have whatever you want. But in 6 months' time, it will tell you what you have is not enough. You will buy the latest television now. It will be your craving and delight. You will see the World Cup upon it. You will look at all the players and all the multicolored features. But 6 months' time, there'll be a new model out. It will be in a new casing and it will be better than the one you have. And the one you have is rubbish in comparison. That's what you're told. And the world doesn't just do it with televisions. It does it with everything in life. It does it with our clothes. It does it with our vehicles. It does it with every avenue of life. In fact, it continues to do it even with the standard of living we have. And the world is never, ever satisfied and has no intention of doing so. You know, the world's intention of doing so is exactly what is happening to it. It is passing away. You all have heard the stories of the man who had his donkey, and he wanted to get it to move along, and it wouldn't move very fast. So what he learned is, if he hung a carrot in front of the donkey's nose, it would do whatever he wanted. It would go wherever he wanted. And Satan has learned, as long as he lands a big enough carrot in front of the sinner's face, he will follow it to hell itself. Like a silly ass who does not watch where his feet are going, but follows simply the carrot, even to the edge of the cliff. And when his first foot goes over, he doesn't notice. And when the second foot is gone, he doesn't care, for he's still watching the carrot until all four hooves are right over the edge and he has perished. And so it is with everyone who follows the course of this world. The world is passing away along with its desires. And its desires will never ever be satisfied. They will never keep us. In fact, Satan is intent on destroying us and taking us to his own destruction. And if you worship the world and you believe what the world tells you, you will go to hell. It is as blunt as that. Because the love of the Father is not in it. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. God doesn't put a carrot in front of our nose and drag us along. And God does not tempt us and draw us to follow him. Because God knows that would never work. What God does is transform and change. He reveals the emptiness of the world, the deception with which it tells us that it can satisfy every need, and then shows us this world is passing away. Your clothes rot, your body fades, your car rusts, still even in this modern age. Everything about this world is temporary and passing. It is all fading away, and all of it eventually comes to a point of death. But God is eternal. God, by definition, never was born, never shall die. God is continual. He never changes. He never wastes. He never falls apart. He never weakens. He is unchangeable from beginning to end. And it is this God who calls to us from the things he provides for us naturally and every day to turn and to see the provisions he gives are careful, loving provisions. But the greatest of these provisions is to deal with the breakdown of our own being. For the do not that was first crossed has left us with sin, and sin brings us to death. But God sent his Son to die. To do something we did not want. To do the one thing that we do not want to face, yet have to face. But he has done it once for all that we might not experience what he did. He died. The passions of this world had no hold of him. He came to do his Father's will. What is his Father's will? That he should lay down his life for we people who are called sheep, who have all gone astray, that we should be saved. And God's will to save sinners abides forever. The passions of this world, you have this amount of money, you're going to be satisfied, that's going to fade. Some of you bought your first house for a few £100 or a few thousand. Now you couldn't even buy your car for that amount of money. Those things always fade, but the will of the Lord abides forever. The will of God. His salvation is eternal, settled, secure. Do not trust in the riches of this world, for it is fading, it is falling, it is perishing. You cannot serve it and God. You must trust God. The will of God abides forever. The will of God is also the pattern of living the Christian is called to. It is the life to which we are to trust, and we can trust it. God has not set in front of us a row of temptations, but a row of precepts which are for our benefit. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength is a command that benefits the soul, the life, eternally. You are to love your neighbor as yourself. It's helpful and beneficial to all of your days. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. And all the 10 precepts that God sets out, they are beneficial, and no man ever was hurt by keeping them. He may feel he lost out physically, but if his heart was in relation to God, he never ever lost out spiritually. God's will abides forever. Friends, is there a carrot in your life you have been following? Do you feel like a silly ass? Because that's the way sinners should feel, isn't it? Do you feel as if you've been following something and you know it's been leading you away from God? Then just turn away from it. Ask God's forgiveness and come back into the will of the Lord, because it abides forever. Isn't it lovely? From beginning to end of the Bible, God doesn't change the plan or the way. He sets himself in front of men and women and he says, follow me. Because he knows what foolish things we would be if we always had to work it out, but we don't. He's laid it out. Come to the Lord Jesus Christ and follow the will of the Father. It abides forever. What we learn here on earth in trusting him and doing his will be our eternal pattern too. Only there in perfection. Whereas here it is in faltering steps. Effectively remain in our Father's plans. Is that what your desire is? We come to big decisions in life. We come to big issues. There are decisions we have to make. Do you pray about them? Or you say, well, I could look at the brochures and seek out what car I should have. Yeah, but what about what car God would like you to have? Do you not think he can help you in that? Well, you say that's a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Well, there are practical means that come into life. How is it to be used? What is it to do? You think of your future days, your retirement, or whatever days you have ahead of you. Have you asked God, Lord, what do you want for my life? Have you read your Bible and asked God to show you the pattern of life he wants for you? Because if you're not looking to him and the love of the Father is not in you, you'll be looking at your television, you'll listen to your radio, you'll find it in your newspaper. The enemy will wave all kinds of things in front of you. And after a while, if you have drifted from following and seeking the Father's love, you will find yourself following the desires of your heart, walking into sin. And if God did not restrain you, into death, unprotected. But the world is passing away, and all along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. Does your life seem like a road of sand? Can you see that it is not going to support your weight much longer? You will soon sink beneath its weight, and the way of your life will perish forever. Then you are following the world. But if you find in front of you solid rocks, path on which you can tread with security and safety, then truly the soul has found the rock, the Lord Jesus Christ, to follow. The everlasting. Beware. The world does promise a fairy tale ending. We need to know that. Men and women out there are not living for nothing. They're living for the fairy tale ending. Children are going through school and believing if they do well, then everything's going to work out just lovely for them. If they can get those A stars in high school and then go into college and get that degree and do, then life is going to be wonderful. But we know in this age, actually, it doesn't turn out that way, does it? But still we keep believing the dream. If I can just get the right job and the right house and find the right lady or the right man and settle down, then life is going to be great and be wonderful. The divorce rate increases. The broken homes continue. The world has never fulfilled its promise. And even if all these things should continue out and break down, still we come, well, there'll be an opportunity. We get through our working life, we're beginning to look to our retiring life. You know, if you work hard now and you put all your effort in, then you'll have many years. There was a man who believed that in the New Testament in one of the parables. He had a good harvest one year and decided he would build bigger barns. God said to him, "You fool, this night your soul will be required of you." The world promises a fairy tale ending it cannot meet or fulfill and has no intention in paying out on. And to live life without God is to live with a fairy tale ending in mind. To hope that when you die there is nothing else, that's a lie. To hope that you have done enough, there is no hope in that. The world watches fairy tales, believes fairy tales, lives with fairy tales, but cannot exist on fairy tales. Beware of them. When you look at your television, when you listen to your radio, remember from where it is coming, a world that believes fairy tales. They have no realization truly of the truth. It is good to receive information. It is good to understand certain things, but let us not be unaware nor foolish, for the world is at enmity, at war with God. If then there is the world promises fairy tale ending that it never can keep, that there is a need to have God-controlled habits. The love of the Father needs to be in us. And the habits are very simple. We keep repeating them because we need them repeated. We need to come to the Word. We need to seek Him in prayer. We need a life that is controlled by the Word of God and how He desires us to live our lives. Yes, we are in the world, and we will always have this continual realization we are in the world, but the Scripture also says we are not of the world. The Christian is the weirdo, the one who sticks out like a sore thumb, the oddball. We mentioned with the young people this closed last night, we're either a John the Baptist or a Jesus Christ. You remember John the Baptist? He was a bit of a strange man. He was a man out of the fringes of society. He was ever so strict, didn't drink and do, and they said that he must be a madman. Of Jesus Christ, they said he's a wine bibber and a friend of tax collectors. They will always think we're of us. We're in the world, but not of it. My friend, that is not important. What is important, that we have lives that are controlled by God and that He will keep and bear us into eternity. And every promise that He has promised us, He will fulfill. The car the world promises will break down. But the eternal life that God promises will never require a hospital, nor a doctor. The riches the world gives us all perish and fade and flee. But the riches of God's eternity will last forever. We will never exceed the riches of His glory. The protection the world says it will give us from thieves and robbers and all the alarms and the kit that it gives us will not truly keep out those that are most dangerous to our soul. But God will separate us from sin. And nothing will break it. No one will break in and destroy there. My friend, you need a God-controlled habits. We need God-controlled habits. For this world is passing, but the will of the Lord abides forever. So do not love the world. When you look at it, don't fall in love with it. Look at the trees and look at the birds of the air and see how God cares for each of these. Are you not much more precious than these? May the Lord indeed help us to fall out of love with the world and in love with Him more and more in our lives.